slight partial costume change since earlier on. I'll be changing again later on, so I think we're a couple of costume changes away from a Beyonce concert here, because you know the way she likes her costume changes during the show. So basically, I know a lot of you in this room already. Some of you I've never met before, so just for that purpose, I'd like to just do a little bit of an introduction, a little bit about myself. So, I'm the Director of Youth Development for SPUC Scotland. I started in January 2016, and within that, one of the main things that I do is I run Project Truth, which obviously I'm going to speak about in a bit more depth in a moment. As well as that, on top of that, I'm also the Director of ARCH, which is Abortion Recovery Care and Helpline. Some of you might have been at the conference last year. You'd have heard Claire Bremner from ARCH speaking about what we do, and basically it's a counselling organisation for people who are struggling after an abortion decision. We've got a lot of our befrienders in the room at the moment, so thanks for coming, guys. And they're a very integral part of the helpline that we run and the support that we can give to people who are struggling. So, on top of that, there's 3 things you need to know about me. Number 1, I love camper vans. So if anyone's got a camper van in their back pocket, I'd really like one for Project Truth purposes, or if anybody would want to buy me one, I wouldn't say no to that. Also, I love giraffes, so preserving those African giraffes I am not opposed to, not to the detriment of obviously human life. However, I do love a giraffe, especially this one, it's pretty cute. Also, I do a good Bart Simpson impression. Ay caramba! So, if you don't remember anything I say from this point on, you can remember that and remember you all laughed, so it was good. So today, we're going to speak about Project Truth. It's not going to be a talk really about what Project Truth is as such. We're not going to give a full talk on it. What we want to concentrate on today is the common questions that we might get asked when we're out and about on the street. And we've got a few of the guys here today, as you can see, who are they're hoping to share their experience of certain situations, questions, statements that we get thrown at us on the street. So I know a lot of you probably have been following Project Truth for the past few years and maybe know a little bit about it if you've been to previous conferences. But I just want to kind of do a little summary in case anyone doesn't know what it is. I'll do that very quickly. So we celebrated our 5th anniversary of our roadshow in the summer there in August. It was started in 2013 by Rachel Monroe, who was the Development Officer for SPUC Scotland at the time. It is the main youth initiative of SPUC Scotland, and it started as monthly stalls. We still do that, and we go and speak at various things as well. And we have our summer roadshow, which takes place annually every August. So what do? We travel around different towns and cities all across Scotland, and we bring the pro-life message to the streets in a fun and vibrant way. We give out information flyers, we chat to passers-by, we have questionnaires filled in, and if there's any relevant petitions, we would have them signed as well. And we also visit politicians as well as part of that. We've got one of the politicians here is in the room, John Mason, and he came to visit our stall in Glasgow last year, as did a number of other politicians as well. And we're grateful for those politicians that they say yes to us coming to share our concerns with them, and even more so to those who actively support us, and ones like John here who came out and visited the stall. We're very, very grateful for that, so thank you. So also, while we're doing all this, we concentrate on the development of the baby within the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. All of our flyers, just a little plug for the Project Truth stall, and all the other stalls that are here actually, so at lunchtime you might want to wander around and see all the different things that's going on, but we've got the Project Truth stall out there that's set up. We have our flyers on there. On the back of the flyer we have different development points of the baby within the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. The heart is beating very early on, we know that. It's got arms and legs, fingers and toes, all the bodily organs are present. So that's a good talking point when we're out there on the street. And why do we concentrate on those first 10 weeks? Because in the UK, most abortions take place within the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. When people think of these first few weeks, they often think of a clump of cells, which is not yet a human being. But our overall aim is to dispel this myth and show the truth and humanity of the unborn child. So what we want to do now is just move into the sort of common statements and questions that we might get when we're travelling around Scotland and we're interacting with the public and all those levels. You heard from the video there that it is an all-encompassing mission, as Jamie said. That's what we're doing. We're doing this first and foremost because we actually care about women, and that is the kind of main thing that we're doing. We can offer them help if they are in a crisis pregnancy situation, and if we do meet people who are struggling after abortion, which we quite often do. I think all the team members have had a conversation at some point with somebody who has been directly affected by abortion or knows somebody who has been. So we know that it affects so much society. So, I just wanted to just say how we did it first before we move on to the questions. It's listening is one of the main things that we have to do to people. If I expect somebody to listen to what I've got to say, I need to be able to give them the same in return and listen to what they've got to say and where they're coming from and their pro-choice perspective. Why do they believe that? I need to sort of listen to that and be able to respond in a loving and kind way. And obviously from that the conversation comes to where our point of view lies, and hopefully they'll follow us with that. So we listen to understand and not to refute. And we want to be present with them in the moment with that person and make them feel that they're being taken seriously. We don't want to make them feel as if they're not. We have to. That's definitely a big part of it. And communication is key. We know that venting will happen. It's a heated topic. We know that venting will happen, so we need to keep calm and let them vent. We affirm their feelings, what they're feeling at the time, because quite often when people come up to us very, very angry, they're coming from an area of pain. Maybe they had their own experience, maybe someone close to them has, so they may be coming from that area of pain. So we can't tell them, you're feeling angry just now, you're not feeling angry. We have to let them vent and get that out and listen to them. And then through that, listening to what they have said, we find some sort of area of common ground that we can agree with, obviously without compromise. We wouldn't compromise our position while doing that, but we can find something in what they have said to agree with and then talk about that, and then they begin to trust you more and open up more for a fruitful conversation. So now we'll move on to the questions then. So what is the most common slogan then that we hear that, what's the most common thing? My body, my choice, right? So basically, my body, my choice, it's bodily autonomy really, so that's where the person's coming from. They might have a very strong sense of bodily autonomy. It might be, we find often with this statement that people certainly may not think about the reason behind that statement or think about anything behind it because they've heard it the whole time growing up. And all they can say and all they can sort of regurgitate is my body, my choice, my body, my choice. And that is their argument for everything. So they have no actual thought behind that. So if we can help them in some way to think beyond that slogan that they've heard so often, that's a really great thing that we're able to do. And I know that obviously we're in Scotland, we're in Glasgow. My sort of recent example of the whole bodily autonomy thing is the Iron Brew sugar tax fiasco, changing all the ingredients of Iron Brew. So I'm constantly on a rant of that, but it's like, on one part we're being told that we can't drink a can of sugar, but women can take tablets that are quite dangerous to end the life of their unborn child, and nobody bats an eyelid about it. So that's kind of my kind of common comparison to it. But basically I've got Eden here who's going to come up. And Eden's been on the roadshow with us for the past 3 years. She's obviously enjoying herself, so she keeps coming back, can't get rid of her. So she's going to give a little bit of her own experience of this particular My Body, My Choice that we get when we're on the roadshow.
Hiya, I'm Eden. I am 20 years old and from South London, and I love Project Truth that much that every year I trek up here to spend the week with Louise and the crew. I got involved with the pro-life movement when I was around 3. My parents my mum fell pregnant with a disabled child, and ever since then I've kind of always been involved in pro-life activities. So as Louise said, the main argument on the pro-abortion side is my body, my choice, and guaranteed when you're handing out leaflets and you're like, oh, you know, what's your view on abortion? You're going to get, oh, well, I think the woman has a right to choose over her own body. And, oh, there's that gem. What I normally say is, okay, yeah, no, I think a woman does have a right to choose over her own body, but during abortion, is she actually, you know, like, what's the effect having on her body, and does it affect anybody else? So the first thing you've kind of got to establish is the bodily autonomy of the child. So I'd normally say, okay, yep, her body, her choice, and what's the choice? What is it that she's making, like she's choosing to do? Oh, well, I think she's choosing to terminate the pregnancy. Okay, yep, that's right. And what's involved in the pregnancy? Oh, well, you know, it's her body. And you're like, yeah, so it's an unborn child. And they'll say, well, no, I don't think it's an unborn child until it's born, or until it's viable and able to live outside the womb without its mother. And in those circumstances, you kind of got to think, well, no one can really live without an adult feeding them for the first few years of their born life. So, you know, at what point does it become a human, and at what point is it, you know, not good to have an abortion? And they'll say birth, so that's, yeah, so it's okay, is it okay to kill a child 5 minutes before birth, 5 minutes after birth? And they'll be like, oh no, that's ridiculous. And you'll kind of bring in the rule, well, did you know that it's okay in Scotland to kill a child up to birth for disability, and that includes a cleft palate? And that most people are absolutely horrified. They don't know that that's actually a law that's been passed. So the way I normally establish that a baby is a human being from conception is the three things. It's distinct, it's living, and it's whole. So it's distinct in that it has its own unique genetic makeup, its own DNA. It's living, anything that's growing is alive. As soon as it's conceived, the cells start to, you know, proliferate, I think that's the right word. Anyway, multiply. And if the cells are multiplying, it must be alive. And if it's not a human, what is it? Is it a cat? Is it a dolphin? No. It has to be human mother, human father, human baby. And it's whole in that nothing needs to be added or taken away from it to make it more or less human. It just needs what we all need, time to grow, and obviously nutrients. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, it's attached to the mother's body, so if it's attached like it's a parasite, it's feeding off her. This sounds really weird, but I normally kind of bring in breastfeeding. If a child's born, you know, it's kind of attached to the mother when it's breastfeeding, and it's receiving food, does that make it part of the mother's body? And they'll be like, oh, no. And well, it's kind of the same concept. Yeah, it's attached to the mother's body, but it's separate from the mother's body. It has its own heartbeat, its own brain, it's 2 hands, it's 2 legs. And a woman, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't have, you know, 2 hearts and 4 legs and 4 hands and 2 brains. So yeah, that's really what I have to say.
Okay, another one that we get quite often is people saying to us, "You've never been in that situation. What do you know?" And you know, I've had that myself. You know, someone was really, really angry at me one time. She's like, "You're just a wee lassie. What do you know?" And I was like, I smiled at her and I sort of laughed and I said, "Listen, that's very, very kind of you. I don't know what age you think I am, but I think I'm a wee bit older than you think I am." And we both laughed at that, and that sort of broke the ice. So we were able to go on and have a really good conversation off the back of that. We spoke for about half an hour, and that was a really good conversation. So like I was saying before, you know, anything that we can do to get common ground with them, to break the ice, is really good in actually establishing that first connection and conversation. But yeah, like, people do assume that, you know, if you've never been in a crisis pregnancy, you're not allowed to have an opinion on abortion. You know, and we know that's not true. We know that we can have an opinion. We know abortion's wrong. And it's just like the same as, you know, I don't have to be a slave to know that slavery was wrong. I don't have to have been part of the Holocaust to know that that was wrong. We know that abortion's wrong. And so it's difficult sometimes when you're trying to sort of get the common ground with the person, because they're telling you, you've never experienced this, and quite rightly so, I've never experienced a crisis pregnancy, so it's difficult to get the common ground. But actually we were really blessed. Last year we had someone on our team who had experienced an unplanned pregnancy, and she was able to bring that, because so when people gave that question to her and said, what do you know, you've never been in this situation, she was able to say, well actually I have been in a very similar situation. And you could see them, it was amazing to see, because that gave her a lot of ground where she was able to actually calm them down. They thought, oh right, okay, I'm going to listen to her then. And she had really, really good conversations. So I'd like to then invite Sarah up to explain a little bit about her own story and how she got on in the roadshow.
Hi everyone, I'd just like to first say thank you for being here today. This is a subject very close to my heart. Sorry, can you hear me better now? So as Louise said, I'm Sarah and I'm a 24-year-old mother. I work full-time in a law firm in Glasgow and I study part-time in the evenings to become a qualified solicitor, but as most of you in this room who know me will know, the greatest job in the world is being a mother to Dominic. Right there. I joined the Project Truth Roadshow back in 2017 because of Dominic. He is our unplanned pregnancy, who I always describe as being the greatest gift of life. He is truly the greatest gift of life to myself and his dad Andrew. The reason I joined the Roadshow was because I wanted to share the truth that Dominic's life in the womb mattered and that every unborn child's life matters. I thought that my experience would show those who we met on the street that women are strong enough to say yes to life. We are strong enough to give birth and raise our children no matter what situation they are born into, and that the chosen life does empower us. And I think if you hear of Andrew and I's story of having Dominic when we were younger, that is what defined what we did with the rest of our life. This experience is important in today's society, especially when we have those on the other side of the pro-life, pro-choice argument running social media campaigns such as Shout Your Abortion, where women are really glorifying what abortion is. I think it is important for those who have been in unplanned pregnancies to stand up and say, look, I chose to raise my child and look at what life this gave me. As we all know, this is a fundamental human right issue, so by no means do I have any more right to be standing up here today than any of you guys who are here supporting us today. And from a scientific perspective, we do know that life in the womb exists, so it isn't just all about experience, but unfortunately today in society, experience does gain credit, and it also gains you kind of attention. So those women who are glorifying what they've went through, or other people glorifying what they went through, is definitely what captures people's attention in the media. So that is why I chose to join the Project Truth Roadshow. When on the roadshow, as Louise said, one main question we got was, you don't have a right to speak about this. We had, on the very first day, a woman with a young child approach us and say, can I just ask, do any of you have kids? And I said, yeah, I do. And I'm very open to say, and he was born in an unplanned pregnancy. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm actually proud of it. I'm proud that he was born. I think this, in these situations, makes people think, okay, I'm going to engage with you because you've had that experience, and most of the time it's, don't say it until you're in my shoes. Well, I was in shoes similar to yours, and well, do you know what, I've done all right for myself. So as our story goes, in 2015, Andrew and I found out that we were expecting our first child. I was at law school, I was in my third year, and I was about to start a summer placement. Both Andrew and I kind of had our rough 10-year plans, as everyone does, and we can say a child was not in that plan. I had a lot of things to do before I had Dominic, but we found out we were expecting Dominic, or I was expecting Dominic, although I like to say we because it was the both of us that were in the crisis pregnancy. By no means was it just me. And most people said to me, are you going to drop out of university? Your life is over, what are you going to do? I was a bit like, well, hold on here, give me some credit. So 9 months went past, Dominic was born. 3 weeks later, I went back to university. 6 months later, I graduated from university the day he turned 6 months old. And can I just say that was because of the support I had from people like Andrew, Louise and our families, so by no means was it just me. And come March, I'll have graduated for the second time with my diploma as a qualified solicitor, and Dominic will have been just turned 3, so it is pretty awesome. In the meantime, Andrew has also succeeded in his career, which is also amazing. But I think the both of us can say together that wholeheartedly, Dominic is the greatest achievement of our lives. And he has really empowered us to do it all, because to be honest, before we had Dominic, you don't realise the strength that you have. And any mother will know that, whether it was a crisis pregnancy or not, they will know that a child gives you strength. And I think that is what the Project Truth Roadshow is about. It's about telling not just women, but women and their families that they have support, they have our support. It's about encouraging them to know that they are capable of the ultimate love of motherhood, and it is about witnessing to them that they are strong enough to face motherhood, and not just motherhood, but life after birth, because that is a very difficult time, not just for women who have not planned to have children, but for all women, and I don't think sometimes society doesn't recognise that enough. And I think it's not just about giving the witness to women and encouraging women, but it's about encouraging society. Society have lost faith in women. They've lost faith that women are strong enough, because we have this alternative. That alternative does not give us strength. What gives us strength is having our children and seeing that we can do that. And as one great woman who is an all-time hero of mine once said, the world doesn't need what women have, it needs what women are. Thank you.
As you've all heard, that's a very powerful testimony from Sarah there, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. And like I said, we're very blessed that Dominic's given you the high five there. Well done, mummy. But yeah, we're very blessed to have her as part of the roadshow, and she really did, when that question was brought to us, actually, we did have someone there that could actually answer from their own experience, so that was amazing. One that I think all of the males that have been involved in the roadshow at one time or another, they've obviously got this, that you've heard it yourself. You're a man, you have no right to an opinion on this. So all the guys, I think every single one of them have heard that. Now Declan actually, when we were on the roadshow, every time we looked at him actually, he was talking to young women. And we were like, oh look at him, he obviously thinks this is a dating service or something like that. So we were all kind of having a laugh and all that about that, but actually there was a reason for that, and Declan's going to explain a little bit more about that and this particular question.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm delighted to be here speaking to you today about what I think is a really important thing in the pro-life issue. I'm just going to try and take this mic off. Aye, that's us. So, I'm Declan. As Louise said, I'll be covering what I like to call the no uterus, no opinion objection to abortion, which, as Louise said, it's basically put, it says that your status as a man precludes you from saying anything about abortion. Ironically enough, if you're in support of abortion and you're a man, you can say whatever you like, but it's something that's levelled at us men on the pro-life side quite a lot. So I'm going to share with you the kind of 3-step routine, if you like, for dismantling this objection that I've been taught by SPUC, so that if any men in the audience, if this happens to you the next time you're having a pro-life chat, you can hopefully maybe respond to it effectively and get over it quite quickly and return to more productive pro-life conversation. So just a little bit about me before we get started. So I am a 22-year-old philosophy student in the final year of my degree right now. I do help out with SPUC in my spare time. I've been involved with Project Truth for about 18 months now, more or less. It was the start of summer 2017 when when Louise persuaded me to join Project Truth. So I've been on 2 roadshows since then, and they've been 2 really phenomenal experiences. But I wasn't always up for stepping into the breach, if you will, with regards to the pro-life issue. I personally come from a Catholic family, so I'd always kind of grown up with the belief that I'd taken that abortion as bad as kind of a given. But out with family circles, I'd never actually, if the abortion debate came up, I suppose the best way to describe it would be that I was too feared to actually get involved in the debate. So yeah, if you pushed me, I would have identified as pro-life, but it's not something I defended with much vigour at all. That changed about approximately 4 years ago when I was living in Spain for a short time. One of the friends that I met in Spain was a pro-life activist, a really enthusiastic pro-life activist, and we were chatting about the issue of abortion one evening. And so he showed me, it was actually quite a graphic video of the products of an abortion, and I had never seen anything like this before personally. I suppose because I hadn't seen that before, you might say I was a wee bit sheltered beforehand, because I never came face to face with the reality of what an abortion actually is. But this experience kind of changed that. I kind of, for the first time, became aware of what was not only seen as legal in my country, but it's actually seen as moral progress in my country. And I knew I couldn't really kind of justifiably be feared about it anymore. You might say I went from pro-life passivity to pro-life activity. So I got involved with SPUC about 2 years ago, and I've been really lucky. They've trained me up on how to talk about, Louise and Emma have been really good in training me up on how to talk about pro-life issues more effectively with folk. And on the Project Truth Roadshow, you get pretty much every objection in the book thrown at you. This one, the no uterus, no opinion objection, as I call it, it does get levelled quite a lot. Now you would think that it's predominant, this is what Louise was saying, you would think that I wasn't chatting up the birds, as Louise said. You would think that this objection would normally come from women, but that's actually not what I found was the case. I suppose, although I don't agree with what they're saying, I can kind of understand where women are coming from, sort of, by using this objection against men. But the most common way I heard it was actually from men. So I would mention the word abortion to men that were walking down the street, and they would kind of tut and they would say, "No, son, that's not for me to say, that's not for you to say," and they would just kind of continue along their way, and most men actually refused to stop and talk to me about it. So the result of that was most of my conversations were with young women, and while I can understand it to an extent from women, I couldn't help but feeling it's a bit of a cop-out if you're a man. So you're just precluding yourself from taking any responsibility whatsoever for what is a really important moral issue. So yeah, it can come from, normally it would come from women, but it can, my experience has been, it comes quite a long time, quite often from men as well. So as pro-choice arguments go, this is the good news, as pro-choice arguments go, some of them, when articulated well, can be quite difficult to grapple with. They can throw you sometimes, and it can be quite hard to actually come up with a good response. Fortunately, this isn't one of those good pro-choice arguments. My favourite pro-life philosopher from the States, Josh Bram, actually describes this argument as the lamest pro-choice argument he's ever heard in his life. It's a silly argument, but it's one that you need to know how to contend with. So I'm going to share with you it's a quick 3-step routine, if you will, that I've learned from SPUC on how to deal with this objection when it gets levelled at you. So say you're having a really good pro-life productive conversation with someone, and they say something like, "Hang on, I don't think you're due an opinion on this issue, you're just a man. You don't know what it's like to be pregnant." I won't lie, lots of the time the vocabulary is a bit more colourful than that when this objection gets levelled, but that's the general gist of it. So the first thing to do is always to find a bit of common ground with the person that's levelling this objection. I know I'm speaking with a lot of seasoned pro-lifers in the audience today, and I'm sure you'll understand how tempting it can be to just dismiss this as ridiculous, because it is a silly objection and it can be really frustrating. if you're having a dead, productive pro-life conversation, and then someone just throws this out of the blue, this completely illogical argument at you. But although that's the temptation, the best thing to do first of all is to come to common ground with the person that's levelled the objection at you. So you might want to say something like, yeah, you're totally right, I'm not a woman, I will never get pregnant, I will never know how it feels to have the pressure of a pregnancy. It sounds really, really obvious and like trivial to say that sort of thing, but the passion with which this objection is levelled seems to suggest that they think, I say they, that your pro-choice opponent doesn't know that you've grasped this very basic fact. So if you start by finding common ground, no matter how basic it is, it at least establishes that you're not talking past each other, sort of thing. So a really good first step is to find common ground. The second thing to do is to clarify exactly what it is that this objection is saying. So, like I alluded to before, lots of the time this objection can be levelled with, in the midst of lots of like emotional rhetoric and emotional words. So it's important to actually get to the claim that your pro-choice opponent is actually arguing for. And that claim is basically that if you have no first-hand experience of a person's situation, you cannot offer any moral judgments on what that person does in that situation. That's the claim that they're essentially defending, no matter how much they surround it with, as I say, emotional rhetoric. So step 2 is to just clarify that and make sure they know that's what they're defending. And just about all the time when you clarify that, they'll agree that that is in fact what they are defending. So step 3, which is the really important part, is to take that assumption and show that it's false. And you do that by taking the assumption and applying it to a non-abortion related example. So the best one that Josh Bram, the American pro-life philosopher, recommends, pretty big Josh Bram fans in the Project Truth team, he talks about the example of Andrea Yates. So Andrea Yates was a young woman in Texas in 2001. It's a tragic story. So she suffered from severe postnatal depression, and she drowned 5 of her babies in the bathtub. Now, a story like this, when you're speaking to a pro-choice opponent, you can say something like, I will never experience postnatal depression, I will never know what it's like, but I will absolutely make a moral judgment that the action that she did was wrong, and I will absolutely support the view that those actions should be illegal. So here we have a clear example of where you have no possible way of getting first-hand experience of a person's situation, but in this instance it's okay to make a moral judgment. So what you're doing is basically you're showing that the objection, the thrust of the objection, the core of the objection that they have levelled at you is completely inconsistent. Now you can use whatever example you like to show this point. That you can use slavery, for example. We're never going to be, like Louise had mentioned this earlier on, we're never going to be, well, hopefully we'll never be in the position of slaves, but we can still see that it's wrong. So that's 99 times out of 100 when you level this objection, when you respond to this objection in this way, your pro-choice opponent will kind of realise that it maybe wasn't the most logical objection to use, and hopefully return to more productive conversation afterwards. The scientific arguments, the logical arguments, where the pro-life cause normally tends to win out. I say 99 times out of 100 because, knowing my luck in Perth, I got the one guy out of all 100 people who actually, despite me answering him and using this 3-step method, he still maintained that for some reason I could make a moral judgment with the Andrea Yates case, but still precluded me from doing so in the abortion case. So I had said to him, my way of responding to that was, listen, so I'm really enjoying this conversation, it's a great conversation we're having, but the only thing I ask is that you're consistent with your arguments. And his response kind of exemplified what I think the problem with this objection is. He said, no, you don't have to be consistent with your arguments. And I just kind of waited for 5 seconds until it clicked in his head what he'd said, and he was a bit deflated for the rest of the conversation. I didn't want to deflate him, but when you use arguments like that, if you're speaking to someone who's had basic training and knows a little bit about what they're talking about, your objection will be dismissed quite quickly if you use this 3-step method to do so. So maybe the best way to respond, because it can feel really, really good when you overcome an objection like that. But for me, the best way, and the way that Josh Bram says is, and Louise and Emma have taught me to respond, is always kind of be open and humble with it and say maybe something like, I could be wrong about my opinion on abortion, but it won't be because I'm a man. It'll be because there's a flaw in my logic, or I'm not understanding the science correctly. Let's get back to talking about science and logic, which will hopefully steer the conversation back towards more productive areas, because as we know, the logic and the science is on our side, guys. So if we can get it back to that sort of a conversation, there's no real doubt the pro-life cause will win out. So yeah, thank you. That's the quick three-step guide for dealing with the no uterus, no opinion election. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Declan. I think he pretty much laid that out brilliantly for us. So the last one that we're going to do, that we get often, which you'll know yourself being pro-lifers, the thing that everyone bases their arguments on is, what about rape? So they use that as basically the basis of being pro-choice. So we've got Grace today, who's going to explain a little bit about how she's tackled that particular question that we get all the time.
Hi everyone, so I'm Grace Deegan, and with my second name you can probably tell that my dad is John Deegan. So I've been pro-life my whole life. I found this picture just before I was to speak of me at my first pro-life march. Pretty cute, I know. And then this was me this year with the same kind of sombre expression on my face, which I'm told I often have. But I really became pro-life of my own accord when I was in 6th year at school. I was in an RMPS class and was the only person in the class that was pro-life. And it was a really upsetting class for me to attend because people spoke so terribly about the unborn and had a really, really bad attitude towards babies in the womb, and it was upsetting to hear what people said, and you know, they didn't know anything about the cases of abortion and the pro-life arguments. And so, you know, I tried to come into class and trying to beat my point, but no one wanted to listen. But this kind of changed when I went to uni and I met a good circle of pro-life people. So a group of us started to do the pro-life group, Glasgow Students for Life, and we went to Washington DC, not just the Glasgow Students for Life, SPUC took us to Washington, and I was all really like fired up because the Americans, they're very like excited and really passionate about everything, so they were like, yeah, like we're gonna defeat it, and I was like, yeah, we are. And then I came home and then you were back in this terrible atmosphere of everyone just saying, oh, it's a clump of cells and this and that. And so I was feeling really rubbish and kind of was thinking, what can I actually do that's productive and I can actually get my pro-life message out there? And so obviously Project Truth was the kind of obvious answer. So I was absolutely dying at the thought of doing it, and just my brother did it, and I think he almost enjoyed telling me the worst possible stories to get me really, really nervous about it. So the first day, it was just kind of a taste of like what people's opinion was, and I was quite surprised at how pro-life people were, because if you have Facebook or Instagram or whatever, everyone you see, celebrities, people in your class, your friends, they're all pro-abortion, and so I genuinely thought that there was no one left that was pro-life. And so I was so glad that there was actually people saying like, you're doing an amazing thing out here. But the problem that I then ran into was this situation, so what about rape? And it is a really difficult one, and I did draw the short straw by doing this talk today. Everyone was like, yeah, Grace really wants to do this one, so that's why I'm here. But I kind of developed a tactic, I suppose you could say, when people would ask me about this, and I found it was quite useful. So basically, it was on the second day, and I was speaking to a guy, and he was like quite well educated on the issue and whatnot. And so we were talking, and he was giving me loads of different scenarios and stuff. And then he was like, "But listen, like you can't force a woman who's been raped to have a baby. Like that's terrible." And I said to him, I was like, "Well, you've just met me today. You don't know my name. You don't know anything about me, where I'm from. But you can look at me today, and I can say that I'm part of like a great family. I've got great friends. I'm at university doing a course that I love, and I would consider myself a successful person. But you have no idea how I was brought into this world. Would that make you think less of me if I told you that I was like the product of rape?" And he didn't say anything, and I kind of waited, and he was like, but and he didn't know what to say, and I was like, "I've got you there," and from that point on, his body language changed, and he actually was so much more open to chatting, and that was then what I went with. So I was saying to people, why are we going to be in a position to actually judge a person on the way that they were brought into this world? Is that not discrimination? How can you judge the value of an entire human being's life in 1 second based on a terrible crime that someone else has committed? And so, like as Declan was saying, and Eden and stuff, it was important to get common ground when you were speaking to people. So, like, interestingly, like I feel some people that are pro-abortion almost think that pro-lifers in some way don't care that women are raped or it doesn't affect them. And that's what I was saying to people. I was like, it absolutely does. Like, I think that's absolutely terrible. And Emma and Louise like said a good thing to us, which I said to loads of people throughout the week, was that rape is a terrible violence against an innocent human being, and that's why I hate it. But then similarly, abortion is a terribly violent crime against an innocent human being, and that's why I hate abortion. You know, and so once you actually got that common ground of, look, I'm against rape, so are you, we could, you know, you could really work from that. And then I was saying to these 2 young girls who brought up the rape thing, I was saying it's really sad that we've become a society that when a woman is raped and becomes pregnant as a result, our first response is to say like, okay, you need an abortion, you need to come and get an abortion and that'll be it. You know, women aren't actually getting the chance to heal from the trauma of something like rape because they're put on this conveyor belt of just go through this and you'll be fine. And there was a case study that we looked at before we did Project Truth of a woman called Liana who, when she was 13 years old, was raped by 2 men and became pregnant as a result. And when she went to the hospital, the doctor said to her, like, don't worry, like, we'll get you an abortion and that'll be you sorted. And she said at 13 years old, like quite profound, she was like, will that make me forget that I was raped? And then the doctor was like, well, no, it won't, it'll just, you know, take away the baby. And she was like, well, why would I do something that's not going to benefit anybody? And she really took on the responsibility of the child that was in her womb, and she said that was the greatest blessing of that terrible crime. And because there was so many times, she said, like, she showered again and again, and she was still felt so dirty and disgusting, and she thought about killing herself. But she just said that that baby inside of me was the reason I kept going, and I was living for someone else, you know. And that's what people don't want to think about. And you know, as they were saying earlier, like, we're not actually trusting that women are strong and can do, like, they can go through this, and if we're there to help them in these terrible circumstances, they will be okay. And so the last day of Project Truth, I'd had so many angry people running over and saying, what about rape, and getting dead angry and using colourful language. But on the last day, I was chatting to a woman, and she didn't look like your typical pro-life person. She kind of came over and was like, what's this you're doing? And I was like, we're just talking about the humanity of the baby. And I was like, she's going to start shouting at me. And then she was like, oh, this is brilliant. And we got chatting, and it turns out that she had been sexually abused by a family member growing up, and then was abused by other men and became pregnant as a result. And she was like, despite what people think when they look at my situation, I'm happy. And you know, that was the best thing that could happen to me, and I'm the woman that no one wants to hear about. And I was like, that is so true. There's these women who have suffered terribly, but nobody cares to talk about them. They just want to shove this thing of you've been raped, you need an abortion, that's going to solve it. And that woman was just like, well, no, that wasn't what was going to fix it. And she was able to move on because she had this great gift of a child out of something so terrible. And so that was a good way of wrapping up my week of interesting conversations about rape. So yeah, what about rape? Well, don't discriminate against how someone's been brought into the world. Every human being is valuable, no matter who their dad is. No matter what circumstances they've come to existence. And yeah, that's the most important thing that you need to just speak to people about. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I hope you've all enjoyed a little bit of insight into the kind of conversations. I mean, we could be here all day and have a full conference on that, really, all the different conversations we get. But I hope you've enjoyed the ones that we've chosen today, and thank you so much for the team members that came and shared that with us, and I think they did very, very well. We're very proud of them.